and diversity. Okay, so now we're recording. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We have two amazing ASL interpreters that are helping out today because I advocate for diversity and inclusion. We have a lot of deaf talent watching and people that are hard of hearing. And so we have Danny and Sarah, they're going to be interpreting. And at the end of the conversation, I'm going to be opening up for questions. I just don't know how many more people we're waiting for, but I guess we'll just get started because we only have a short amount of time. Also, I want to do a visual greeting, an audio description for the blind and the visually impaired. So my name is Kramer. I'm a white woman with short red hair, green eyes, and I'm wearing a green jacket and a black top. And I'm also now going to introduce the panelists that we have. And I just wanted to say that Vanessa Lapa is an amazing filmmaker. And I first got to know her when I introduced her amazing award-winning, eye-opening film, The Decent One, about Heinrich Himmler. And she's able to go inside the minds of monsters in history, and Albert SPEER is no exception. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her before we get started. Vanessa Lapa is an Israeli Academy-winning director and producer, and she started as an accomplished journalist. That's why she's so good at research. She produced and directed over 100 news reports for Israeli TV, and in 2001, she founded Real Works Limited, an independent production company specializing in documentary film. Her first TV documentary, Olmert, a concealed documentary, was in 2009 about Israel's former prime minister, was hailed as a uniquely insightful achievement in cinema verite. Of course, as I mentioned, I met her in 2014 when I presented The Decent One. So I was more than happy to be able to present SPEER Goes to Hollywood, which has already won a lot of awards, including the Israeli Academy Award, the Ophir Award, right, this year. And Vanessa returned to the Berlinale for this film in 2020. And she also won Best Director from the Jerusalem Film Festival this year. And I can't think of a more relevant film that really demonstrates what we're going through and just fighting for our democracy and fake news being such an issue, and just all the issues in this film, even though it took place many years ago, are relevant today and unfortunately, sadly, timely. So welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Kat, for this amazing introduction. Thank you for hosting this Q&A. Thank you for everything.
You want to do your audio description, visual description?
I'm Vanessa Lapa, the director and producer of SPEER Goes to Hollywood. I'm wearing a black jacket and I have black hair.
Now to Tomer. Tomer Eliav is the producer, sound designer of SPEER Goes to Hollywood, and he's an Israeli Academy Award-winning producer as well. Born and raised in Israel, Tomer graduated as a sound engineer and worked as a sound designer, very relevant to his work on this film with the sound design. And he designed and mixed over 100 projects, too many to name here. And he's also mentored and lectured various cinema students and become a member of the Israeli Academy. Tomer is the co-owner of Real Works Limited. Welcome, Tomer. Thank you so much for being here and joining Vanessa today.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate that. I describe myself like I have a long hair, I'm wearing a blue jacket, and I have blue eyes.
And last but not least, Frank Ilfman, who's an amazing composer, and he's wanted to be in music since he was 8 years old. He's also studied piano and has a tremendous background in trombone, and studied at the Jaffa Conservatory in Tel Aviv. And as a teenager was playing lead trombone with the Tel Aviv Dixieland Band. And he got very frustrated in his career and decided that he wanted to become a composer, which he is now, having composed so many films and television projects, and won the Saturn Award for Big Bad Wolves. Among other films, he's scored Ghost Stories and The Operative, and he just finished Gunpowder Milkshake. He's also known for the drama Rory's Way, and of course, SPEER Goes to Hollywood. He's also nominated for an IDA award for Best Music Score. So we're so happy to have him here. Welcome, Frank.
Thanks for that. Happy to be here.
If you'd like to do your description.
So yeah, I'm Frank Ilfman. I'm a composer, a film composer. I wear a black shirt. I got 3 glasses and no hair, and my underwear. Because it's nighttime. Now I'm only joking.
It is. It's so many hours later. My goodness.
Yeah,
This is
yeah. No, it's all right. We're filmmakers. We're used to it. So, and I sit in a room full of electricity and cables. So yeah.
Well, I wanted to start with Vanessa because having watched the film so many times and thinking, this is the most eye-opening documentary I've seen in many years. And as I mentioned before, it's sadly timely and relevant to what we're going through today, and scary on so many levels, I think on all levels. Would you talk a little bit about the research that you did for the film, and how you discovered the story and the tapes, knowing about SPEER's book, Inside the Third Reich, but how you came to the knowledge of this particular story that he was trying to get his movie made and have a screenplay developed. I assume it was while you were making The Decent One, but could you talk a little bit about how you came to the story and what the process was just in the research?
So everything started when The Decent One opened at the Film Forum in New York in 2014. There is a man, Stanley Cohen, who approached me, and he asked me after the screening if I have more research material about the correspondence between Heinrich Himmler and Albert Speer. And I said yes. He asked if we can meet the next day. I told him that I have previous engagements, but I gave him, there were no cellular phones like today, so I gave him a business card. And we were corresponding via email for a few months. The truth is that I was avoiding to meet with him because I had a gut feeling that whatever story he's going to tell me, it's a story I wouldn't be able to say no to. And after 8 months, Tomer did organize a meeting with Stanley, and he told us about the 1971 Paramount project. And he urged me to go and meet Andrew Birkin, which took another 3 months. And I went to meet Andrew Birkin. And after 15 minutes of the meeting, Andrew told me that actually he didn't took notes about during the 3 months that he spent with Albert Speer, but he recorded everything. And then he pushed play, and I heard Albert Speer talking in English. So the rest is history. I knew, that it's something I cannot say no to, and this is how everything started.
Now, I noticed that you had actors do the voices, even though there was audio cassettes. And I know that that's a format that works so well for this. How did you go about, designing that part? And I know Tomer did sound design. How did you go about matching that or getting the voices to correspond with the tapes? I know that must have been hours and hours of coordinating that.
Yeah.
About the cleaning process and make it audible and then transcribing it, Tomer can answer. What I can say is that after we had the fine cut of the film and the voice actors recorded, they came to Tel Aviv and they recorded in sync on screen. we planned with the editor to have 2 weeks in order to adapt. And actually it took half a shift because everything was so accurate to the original. So it took 6 hours to adapt a frame here, a frame there. And Thomas can tell.
Look at it, it was a long process to have this 44 hours, you know, that recorded like 50 years ago on a tape cassette. The quality was really, really bad. We tried to restore them in every way, in the best equipment that there is. And we worked, I think, like 3 or 4 months just to restore the tape and to transcribe them. And we understood that you know, to match the whole film, you know, from this so many sources, because each cassette recorded in a different place and was a different quality. So it was really it wasn't matched. So we need to find.
It was inaudible for 90-minute film. If it would have been, you know, 2 minutes, then it's okay. But sometimes, like if, you know, for example, now we are speaking, if I'm going, you know, 10 feet from here, you will still hear me, but totally differently than the way you are hearing me now. So it's not matching, and it takes the attention of the viewer away.
But at the end of the day, we pitched like I pitched like for the SPEER part, like more than I think 40 people. But we find the right person with the exactly same voice like SPEER, the same dialect. He came from the same area that SPEER was, and it was a perfect match. You know, the first 12 minutes of the film, you hear the real SPEER, and afterwards you cannot even pay attention that it's someone that. The voice is the voice of somebody else. So it was a perfect match.
Yes, yeah, it sounded exactly. And how did you find the actors for that? Did you already know them, or?
No, we just you know, search over Germany, you know, over the area that SPEER came from, and
agencies who are, you know, who have voice actors, and they are described, male, the age, the area they are coming from. It was in purpose that we didn't want a famous actor, because the whole idea is to have the focus on Albert Speer and not on, you know, somebody famous voicing Speer.
Right, and the ironic thing is that he was afraid, you know, that it would be a documentary. That's why he kept saying, let's make a film, because he wanted to whitewash everything. And it became a documentary without his control, which is just amazing. Now, Frank, I wanted to bring you into the conversation. I know you said you wrote more parts for Winds and Strings. The music is just so, well, I always believe music makes the films, or we all know it enhances them, but it's so chilling and so memorable, and yet there was other classical music. How did you how did you go about composing? Like, did you already have a piece in mind, or did you look at the footage? Was it in the mid, did you come on board while they were still editing, or how did that work?
Yeah, I mean, I came on board, I think, more or less when they had like some sort of a rough cut. And Vanessa and Tomer came to London, and we saw a cut of the film and had a whole discussion about how we're going to kind of divide the different parts of the film, which is the realistic one, then it's the kind of docudrama parts, the interviews of Speer, and it was kind of like a long process of trying to get the balance right between how do you kind of take the audience in that kind of manipulation that he did, trying to fool everybody, and at the same time, you know, you show the harsh reality and yet his side. So that was more or less, I would say, the big part of trying to come up with a score. But I didn't have anything. It was all original written to the film. I think our main thing was like having the main kind of title, which is the end credits. So once we kind of agreed on the main theme, then we started taking separate themes to each part that we wanted to do, and yeah, it just went from there, and it's worked well.
Yeah, there is a main theme, I guess that would be his theme, or just the theme of the story that's just, so compelling. But I wanted to ask Vanessa and Tomer about the editing process, and because I always, always want to know what the plight of the editor was when there's so much footage. Obviously, it was just genius. And how did you go about making those choices with your editor? Did you stay in the same editing room with them, or did you let them put their own cut together? What was the process? How long did it take?
It took a year and a half. And let's say that with a pause of 2 months, we edited for, 15 months. I was with Joel, the amazing editor, in the room all the time. We co-wrote the script. But in documentary, the writing of a script is mainly done in editing room. So we did write the script in editing room, and in parallel, we were slowly but surely narrowing the visual research. And sometimes we were finding something amazing in the archive, and then we were going back to the audio to find if there is any reference in the discussion between Andrew and SPEER that could allow us to use the footage that we found.
But
What about the,
No, I just want to say that we are thinking about every frame, and we are in every frame. So Vanessa, as a director or as a producer, so if it's in editing room or out of the editing room, we are there for every stage, every step, 24/7. This is who we are.
that's right, hands-on filmmakers, which
Right.
is so rare today, because there's so many that, whether it's a documentary or fiction, they leave it to the editor, and then they check and see what they're doing. So I commend you for that. What about all the Nuremberg, because as my father made judgment at Nuremberg, but there were different trials, and there's so much, there to explore the footage for that, and how, the editing is so brilliant, how you space that in between. And I assume that was written as you went along in the script from the footage, or did you already plan to space that footage out in between what was happening with SPEER and Birkin?
It was written, you are right, Kat, it was written as we went along, because a lot of the footage we didn't, to cut a very long story short, we needed to digitize all the film reels, because the parts that one see Albert Speer are on 85 different film reels. So the National Archives, the NARA, the National Archive in Maryland, if you want 1 second or 5 seconds of one film reel, you need to digitize everything. But we couldn't know in advance. We did have the audio, because almost 100%, as you know, of the Nuremberg trials were recorded, but approximately 20% were filmed. So we needed to digitize every film reel, I wanted, and it cost a lot of money, but I wanted to digitize all the film reels in order to make sure that every shot or every second that exists with Albert Speer will be used in the film.
in general, Kat, about all the archive research that took almost 5 years. Our aim was to bring that, let's say, 70% of the film is footage that never seen before. So we dig into the Russian archive and into the Bundesarchiv in Germany, and even the shots that looks familiar to us, they are shot from different angles. So we really try to bring like this new material to the movie. Was part of our mission.
Yes, and this was, I mean, the decent one it was 8 years in the making.
Right.
This one was less, correct? Because you already had a lot of the material, you know, that you've gone through and that you'd selected. Did that help you, since you obviously, the other film, did that help you at all with this, or was it like starting from scratch? Other than they're both, you know, monsters that were like obsessed with Adolf Hitler and devoted to him, which is another unbelievably timely and scary, you know, circumstance that's happening now. Was it like starting over, or did it kind of transition?
Yes and no. You know, the decent one took 8 years. SPEER took 6 years. I still think that I could do better because it's way too much to work on a documentary film. And it's not because it's not challenging, but because of the toll that it takes on you and the time, you know, it's 6 years of. So after the decent one that should have done in less than 6 years, emotionally, it's starting all over again. But you are right that research-wise, there is a lot. There is a decent amount of footage that I got from the research on the decent one that is not in the decent one, and that we did use in SPEER Goes to Hollywood.
Now, Frank, I wanted to ask you what were your inspirations on the music, though, because, you know, when you're dealing with such a dark subject, but was there any composers that you drew from, or was it, you know, obviously it's spanning from the 40s to the 70s in terms of the time range, but was there anything that inspired you, or was it just trying to, you know, bring that feeling of what the characters are, even though it's a documentary? It did seem so much like a movie at so many times. It was so dramatic.
I mean, me, Vanessa, and Tomer, we had discussion of using, or actual, what kind of like music that SPEER was listening to, and part of it was, oh, it escaped my mind, the Satan one.
Brahms.
Yeah, it was Brahms, and then it was, yeah, and at the same time, my father and his family went through all the labor camps, which SPEER was responsible. So it was either, you know, if you can work or you know, sent to the gas chamber. So I kind of channeled that that side into the emotional side for me. So in a way, I managed to kind of disconnect, because like, how do you write like for the interviews, or how do you create music that will present him as the good Nazi in a way, you know, which for me was very difficult because I know who the man is, but you know, we wanted to make sure that the music portray him in that way as well, like when he does all his interviews or when he speaks to Andrew, and through these kind of dramatization parts. So it was a mix of what, you know, SPEER would listen to, and kind of try to create part of the score as his sound in a way. And then there's obviously, you know, the other side of the Holocaust, which I connected from my kind of emotional side. And then we had obviously all the, I think for the Nuremberg one, that was the realistic part. So it was more sound design that Tomer did, and we didn't want to have any music. I think it's only a part towards the end where he's in prison. And so I think those were like more the kind of classical inspiration that we use on the film.
Well, it's always so unique, Vanessa, in your films, that all of you, that you want to make sure that people don't think you're glorifying the subject, because obviously you're not, but maybe, you know, like with the decent one, because of the title, or because in this sense, he's known as SPEER, is known as the good Nazi. You know, it is such a fine line how you have to make sure that the message gets across while you're showing, you know, his side of the story or how he wants to be portrayed. But I'm actually going to open it up for questions now, because I see some things in the chat. And Vicky Sampson, you've made so many great comments here. I didn't know if you had a question you wanted to ask, and you can unmute yourself and ask a question.
No, I don't.
Hi there. Yeah, what an amazing piece of work this was. My hat, which I don't have on, is off to you. And what a commitment to the time and energy to make this what it was. I've been a sound editor for 40 years, so I really appreciate all the sound work you did on this. And I kept noticing, oh yeah, they must have foleyed those foot. You know, there's no like real sound in those clips, and you created all that, right? I
Yeah,
imagine.
that's
Yeah,
yeah.
very well done. And just, you know, what I wrote in the chat was I was astonished at how, and Rabbi Janet is here with me. Here, let me say hi.
Hello.
And
Hi.
You know, we were both making a point of saying how astonishing it was how they reframed everything to kind of whitewash it, like you said, Kat. You know, to make it not as atrocious as it was. I mean, maybe that was the only way they could justify what they were doing at the time. I mean, how could anybody justify that in any way? And yeah, did you want to add something?
Well,
Thank you.
that I thought that it was very well put together, in that what was presented was his own view of himself, how decent he was, and how you know, I never concerned myself with these other things. They just were, you know, and by saying he never concerned himself with it, they didn't even exist. So it's kind of like you can understand what's going on today, how people can pay attention to lies as if they're truth. And you know, this guy obviously lived in a world that didn't exist only for him, you know, because he was a great architect, and you know, he had all these opportunities, never mind
Mhm.
somebody else was dying for them,
Right.
you know. It's just astonishing how you know, cavalier, and also it makes us understand him and how he could live with himself, because he just probably thought he was just better than everybody, I guess, and didn't feel anyone else's pain.
Yeah.
exactly like what's going on today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So relevant today, you know.
and I think that, you know, what you all just said was that, you know, it's coming to what you said, Kat, and it's so, you know, I'm aware that I'm taking a risk when doing those kinds of films and not having talking heads or outside narration, but I do trust the viewer to feel and understand, and then asks himself the questions that we are discussing now.
What about the footage at Auschwitz and the concentration camps, obviously, in Crystal Night? Was that new? Those were archival footage, obviously. And my father had used some in Judgment at Nuremberg from, but it was different footage. But was that something that you'd already seen when working on the decent one, or is that all new just for?
The footage of Auschwitz and the air shots, and, you know, this is footage that I didn't have. We got it from Russia, because most of the footage that
Wow.
is available and that is known from Auschwitz, for example, was shot after the liberation. And because the aim is to be here and now, so there are a few shots, but those are new, because the decent one starts in 1900 and ends in 45, meaning before the liberation when Himmler is committing suicide. So they are new.
We have time for a few more questions. So Modella.
I wanted to say that the movie was very well produced, and some parts really spoke to me because I lived in Poland for about 13 years.
Wow.
And my family as well went through some of the story that you told. So I think it just makes the world more aware of what happened historically. And given that from that Poland point of view, I found out that like my aunts were also put in the concentration camps in Auschwitz. And of course they were assassinated, murdered, and then nobody else knew about it. And my family didn't know until about 1945. Then I came to find out that, you know, of course they were murdered in those camps. And then there was a list that came out and that's how we knew about it. So were those parts true, like part of the true story, or was some of it scripted, is what I'm asking.
Nothing is scripted.
No.
I mean, everything is edited and scripted, but scripted only based on what is existing. So nothing is invented. No word is. This is why there may be parts that are not 100% clear because we don't have enough background. But if it was not either recorded or shot, it was not invented.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Paula has her hand up.
Oh, Paula, yes.
Yes, well, the film had such an impact. It was, yeah, very powerful. And I loved the score in particular. And I wanted to ask, did Frank, were you also in charge of incorporating other music, such as the Wagner excerpts and things like that? Did you pick and choose those and decide where they went?
No, that's stuff that Vanessa and Tomer were using in the film. We had discussion about like in parts would we about I wrote like the opening titles, but then I think it worked better with the original classical music and music that kind of will put us straight into Speer's set of mind. And the same went for the ending as well. When it comes out and you got all that kind of victory. So that's stuff that came all from Vanessa.
Okay, and just one more quick question. I think you touched on it a little bit in the beginning, but Vanessa, could you say again how you learned about this? And I mean, once the film's out, it's not going to be a secret anymore, but who knew? I mean, this was like,
You.
yeah.
In a nutshell, after a screening of The Decent One, Stanley Cohen came to me and he wanted to talk with me. It took 8 months because I understood that what I had a gut feeling that what he will tell me is something that I won't be able to say no to. And he told me about the 1971 Paramount project, and he urged me to reach out to the scriptwriter, to Andrew. He didn't know that Andrew recorded his conversation with Speer. So it took another 3 months. I went to meet Andrew, and when Andrew pushed play, I
The rest is
realized
history, yeah.
that I have to listen to it, that obviously this is the next film, and that there is material there that all of us shall know and be aware of.
Well, I see that Vicky is asking what are the plans with the film, or she could ask herself, but it's already been awarded and acclaimed. But we are trying to get it seen, or the powers that be at the Academy for that consideration. So that's, one of the reasons, I mean, I would be doing this anyway, but it is to get Academy members that haven't had a chance to see the film yet, because, you know, there's such a crowded space right now with all the films coming out and all the Q&As and the screenings, but this film really is not only remarkable, but it's different than anything else out there. And it's, as I said earlier, it's the most timely. There's a lot of timely films, but I don't think any of them hit you over the head like this one does, stays with you. It's so memorable and it really is unique. And it already has a feeling of being a classic because it already is.
Did you get it under the, you know, for like foreign film or international film? Because, you know, I'm an Academy
Yes.
member, but I'm in the sound branch, so I can't even nominate
Yeah.
films, you know, like this. You have to be, you know, the
Yeah.
Producers Guild or producers for that. But yeah, I just wondered if it had its, like, you know.
It is in the 138 feature documentaries. So for the shortlist and then the nomination, it's only the Doc Branch members, and then it will open. If we get there, it will open to your consideration as well.
We need to spread the word, and there will be a replay video available of this conversation. And there are Academy members that weren't able to join today, but they'll be looking at this conversation and also the film. So I just want to know if there's any other questions. We have, like, I think 5 more minutes to stretch it out. If anybody had any last minute questions, and it's looking to see, because the film did actually have a limited run. When was that, Vanessa? And it was
it opened at the Film Forum in New York on October 29th, and then at the Lemley Theater on November 5th. We had 2 special screenings in San Francisco at the Roxy and at the Raphael. We plan to open theatrically in Israel in 3 weeks from now, hopefully making it to the shortlist, and then depending on the COVID restriction, opening in Europe.
There was also a screening at the Museum of Tolerance that
correct. It was a preview.
Very impactful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kat.
Teller.
Oh.
Question?
Okay.
If I may just say something, I think this, we're probably gonna run out of time. It seems that we have less than a minute.
Okay, well, I just wanted to have Modella's question answered, and then we'll sign off.
So will the screening in 3 weeks from now have open captions or subtitles in English or something of that sort for accessibility?
There are subtitles in English now.
Yeah, there is.
The captions, yeah. Yes, yeah. And I believe it's captioned too. There's a caption version. Yeah.
There is a caption version.
Well, thank you all so much. I wish we had more time. But Barbara is saying thank you for the years of work it took to tell this story. Incredible. And I wish we had more time, but thank you all so much for coming, and you will get your replay videos.